Hello and welcome to today's webinar on Instagram influence and business. I'll be your host, Liam Fahey from Business Station as part of the Digital Solutions program. So just to begin with, if you're watching this later back online and you have any questions, do feel free to get in touch with me directly. If you're watching this live using our Zoom console, down the very bottom, you'll see the option for the chat and the question and answer function. Feel free to use either of those to ask questions. And we're going to get started. So today's webinar is going to be a little bit of a mix of live demonstration where I'll bring up Instagram on the screen and a PowerPoint filled with information. So I'm going to get that shared onto the screen. One moment. Having a little bit of trouble with my Zoom here. Okay. Hopefully you can all see my screen. So if you see my head bouncing around like this, it's because I've got dual screens going. Okay. So let's start with a bit of the origins of Instagram. A little bit of detail about me first. So I'm one of the full-time digital advisors with Business Station. I've run my own marketing company since 2008. I've now handed the reins of that company over to my business partner. Maintain ownership share, but doing this job full-time. So I'm deeply involved with all things social media, from Facebook through to Instagram, right into TikTok, YouTube, and basically all things online marketing. So Instagram is something that's very familiar to me. I actually was one of the really early adopters of it back in 2010. So looking at the origins of Instagram, it was originally created by Kevin, and the original version was called Bourbon. And the idea was that you'd go in, you'd take a few photos of whiskeys or bourbons and you'd share them, you'd post your plans, basically review different distilleries and so forth. The photo sharing element of it, though, really was the unique selling point. And a little bit of trivia for next time you're in the pub, the very first photo ever taken was a dog in Mexico near a taco truck. So Instagram got brought out by Facebook in 2012, and the two companies are very much intertwined with how they do their marketing. They're very much sort of heading to the direction where almost one platform now. So talking about Instagram, and for a business, advertising is a big part of it. So let's have a look at the advert potential of Instagram. So there's around about 1.16 billion users, give or take, that are active on Instagram. It's growing steadily. It has been for the last couple of years. And it's roughly estimated around about 19% of the population over the age of 13 could be reached using Instagram. So these are worldwide statistics from 2020, the most recent I can get. In comparison to the other big social media platforms that are out there in the world, YouTube has around about 2 billion users, Facebook 2.7. YouTube's often that one that's forgotten. It's actually one of the larger social media platforms in the world. Instagram with 1.15 billion users, and TikTok, one of my new favorites, rapidly growing at just under 700 million users. I believe that they've actually just ticked over 700 now. So as a business owner, probably localizing it back to Australia, you want to know what's your potential. So around about half of all Australians are on Instagram. The audience reaches about 11 million people, and they average around about 8 minutes, 47 seconds per day online. Interesting enough, the overall number of hours that Australians are using online devices, including social media, is rapidly growing. I believe it's up around about 6.5 hours now across all things, including Netflix, emailing, YouTube, and social media. So this last number here is actually really, really important. And it's time that we swap over to something live. I'll show you why that is important. I'm just going to get my mobile shared. Okay, so let's get into Instagram. So I've actually been on it today, but drop straight into it. The average user is going to scroll down through their Instagram and have a look at content and things that they've shown interest in. And I have no idea what this content is going to be. I'm just randomly scrolling. And I come across something I like. I'm going to react and comment with it. And Instagram's going to go, Liam likes that. I'm going to show more of that content to Liam. The reason being is that the more time I'm spending scrolling, the more likely I am to see something like this. This is a sponsored post. That means that Adobe has paid for this content to be put in front of me, the chance of me seeing this content. So that average of 8 minutes and 47 seconds is very important for a business owner, because you want to make sure that you're one of the very first things that your users see at the top. Because just about guarantee it, every single time, right, second or third post is going to be something that's advertising. So the more time users spend on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, so forth, the more advertising they see and the more money these platforms make. So they want to show the most important, the most interesting content. So the algorithm that reads what you do on Instagram is trying to put the most important content at the very top for you so that you see more of it. Therefore, they're going to make more money. So you want to put the most interesting content up first. And adding on to that as well, you have your stories at the top. So across these stories, there's going to be some sort of paid advertising placed in that as well. But again, these stories are organized based on how you interact with social media. Let me get that one closed. So as a business owner, you want to capture the attention of your audience as quickly as possible and keep them engaged. And the key things are liking and commenting and sharing and clicking. The more you can get people to engage with your content, and especially commenting is a big one for Instagram, then the more likely your content is going to come up first. You'll capture the attention of your customer somewhere in those 8 minutes and 47 seconds. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. When you start thinking about what you want to achieve from Instagram, it's important that you know your goal. For most businesses, it's going to come into one of these three categories. You're going to want to promote brand awareness. Have something out there that your customers are going to connect with. If your customers don't know your brand and aren't familiar with it, it's very unlikely that they're going to care enough to purchase your product or connect with you. So you have to have content out there that's going to continuously push your brand. So if you don't have a brand development as part of your business plan currently, I'd be starting to look at it, starting to think about, what are the colors, what's the context, what's the key thing that sets you apart from your competition, and produce that as your brand personality. If you have a strong brand personality, then you can work on things like sales. Sales are great if you have an e-commerce site. If you have an e-commerce site, you need to have Instagram shopping set up. It's very important for users to be able to click on your products and go straight from a product tag to your website to be able to purchase your product. I know that recently Instagram has had a few changes with their e-commerce store, and it is a bit confusing now to reset it up. So if you're struggling with your Instagram shop, what I recommend you do is you uninstall and disconnect all your shops and go again from start using the new Commerce Manager from Facebook. Access that from the desktop version. Leads. Leads are incredibly powerful. Whether it's a direct phone call, a connection through to your website, or you just want to catch the data of someone who's interested in your product or brand. You can achieve all these through Instagram. Leads is mostly done through paid advertising direction. And I'll show you a little bit of that as we go. So the different ways to reach your audience. You can pay to be seen using adverts, which you can put in front of your audience and directly target them. That's how you can generate some leads. You can use the old age approach of in-person adverts. If there's one thing that COVID has taught people, it's how to use QR codes. They're everywhere now. So have QR codes in your physical storefronts where you have your physical presence that link directly through to your social media sites. You can connect your customers through your other socials. It's important to use this to grow your following. That being said, if you have two different socials like Facebook and Instagram, or Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, I'd recommend designing different content for each platform, especially if you're cross-sharing users from one platform to the next. That way, if they go onto Facebook and see your content, and then they go onto Instagram and see your content, they get a different user experience on both of them, not just the same thing put in front of them. That being said as well, with Instagram content, you probably want a more stylized approach than you would with Facebook, where it's a more people-orientated approach. Using hashtags. And for this, I think we're going to swap back over to our mobile view. So I'll just get this set up. Okay. So hashtag searching. So if I come up top here and I type in hashtag mechanic, as you can see, 2.9 million posts have come up, and that's all things mechanical. Let's use a longer tail, something a little bit more complicated, and maybe Rockhampton. Rockhampton Art Gallery. We've just got a new art gallery that's recently been finished construction here in Rockhampton, and hopefully it's going to open soon. So using that hashtag, I'm now seeing all sorts of things relating to, well, essentially anyone can use that hashtag, but relating to content that is connected with Rockhampton Art Gallery. So that picture there is actually the new art gallery. So all things art. So users will literally search for hashtags and things that they're relatable, or they might click on this picture here, this dog, come down here, looking for the hashtags. Here we go, we've got a bunch of hashtags and real dog mums of Brisbane. Now we're going to get a bunch of other content, all things relating to dogs. So this is a brilliant way for your users to be able to connect with your content and go from content to content. So making sure you have the right hashtags is very important, and also the right number. Generally, I recommend somewhere between 5 and 9 hashtags seems to be the sweet spot. And you want to use a different set of hashtags each time. You want to use hashtags that connect and your audience can relate to. So let's keep on going. I'll get my other screen shared. Another way to be able to reach your audience is to use comment engagement. Now, this is a strategy that's been very much popularized by Gary Vee. And if you have a quick search for it, you'll definitely find it. But when you have an Instagram page, more often than not, people just like it. It's very uncommon to actually see any comments. So the strategy basically works like this. You find a hashtag or something that's relatable, like you might want to search a location tag, for instance, like Rockhampton, and you find all the posts that are going up using that hashtag. And then you go through them and you comment on each of them. And generally, if you're going to do this, I recommend you use a question. You find a hashtag Rockhampton and it's a car guy. And you go, oh, what type of engine do you have in that car? Or what modifications have you done to it? What are your tires? Something like that. Or, if it's a lady, oh, who does your nails? That sort of thing. And what happens is the users suddenly go, hang on, someone's commenting, like, that's unusual. And they look you up as well because they want to know who's commenting on their posts. Because most of the time, especially with Instagram, we just get likes and that's it. So if you engage and put comments on them, they have to be meaningful comments. You just can't give the thumbs up. Your users will start to go, well, what's going on here? Who's this person commenting on my content? And they'll look at you, and if they like what you've been posting, there's a high chance that they will follow you. Yeah, it's kind of similar to the old you follow them and then they follow you back approach, which is another way you can grow your audience as well. The sort of final way to reach your customers is to use influencers. And there's a few different ways to approach influencers, especially around choosing them. I'm going to go into more detail shortly, but I just want to talk a little bit more around hashtags because there's always a lot of questions with it. So with hashtags, I always recommend that you keep it simple. You don't want to use overly long and complex hashtags. You want them to be like quickly typable and searchable. They have to be relevant. So if you're hashtagging, dog mums of Brisbane and there's nothing to do with dogs in your post, then it's not relatable, it's not relevant. And if anyone clicks on it and they find you, it's not going to be something that they're looking for. So it has to be relevant. It also has to be relatable. They have to be able to connect with it. More hashtags isn't always better. You're not going to get further if you put 200 hashtags on than you would if you put 20. And I always think it's important to use location hashtags. So if you're in a particular region, there's probably a few different names for your region. Use those different name hashtags just to position you. The big thing is that Instagram is one of those far-reaching platforms. And if you're a local business, a small local business, you want to be able to connect with your customers at a local level. There's not a lot of benefit if you're a cafe having users from Timbuktu commenting and liking your posts. You want to connect with your customers who are in your local region or customers coming into your region. With the difference there being if you're e-commerce focused and you can sell to the world, in which case Instagram is definitely your platform. The final thing is don't be spamming. Don't use the same hashtags every single time. Just simply put, because you probably bore the users that do follow those hashtags. And the second thing is that you miss out on other potential audiences if you're always spamming the same hashtags. So let's have a little bit of a deeper look at paid advertising. You can set budgets that can be as low as $1 per day. And you can really, really fine tune down and target your audience down to the specific group of consumers that would most likely want your product or service. You can create powerful call to actions, which can take people from your website directly, from your Instagram directly onto your website. Generally, I recommend that if you're dragging people from your Instagram onto your website, have the landing pages that are specially designed for people coming from your social medias to land on, which instantly display information that's similar and relatable to where they've come from. You can track the performance of your ads so you know how effective they are and make changes. And you can also do various tests on them to make sure that they're optimized as much as possible. So when you're doing paid advertising, there's generally two different ways to do it. You can do it through the app, in-app, using Instagram's advertising ad tools, or you can do it through Facebook using Facebook's paid ads manager. Depending on what your preference is, they're a little bit different, but they serve the same function. I personally prefer to use ads manager just from my own experience. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up Ads Manager now for you and just sort of give you a bit of a highlight on how it works. So Ads Manager is accessed through Facebook. So I'm just getting that ready on my screen now for you. And just going to get one loaded. Okay, so we have Ads Manager in front of us. So Ads Manager always starts with selecting a goal. What do you want to achieve? Whether it's brand awareness, reach, engagement, lead generation, where you get use forms to get calls and gather information, or things like messages, traffic, store traffic through to your website. All very, very powerful. For the purpose of the example, I'm just going to use the reach campaign. I'm going to click on next. It's selected the page by default, but I'm going to come down here and select my budget. So for this particular ad set, my minimum is $1.35 for one day. It's a daily budget. I'm just going to leave the schedule default, but select it to whatever's appropriate. One little side note is if you use a lifetime budget, it does unlock the ability to run your ads on a schedule. The benefit of this is, if you're running a campaign that connects people through to your mobile phone, then it's probably worthwhile running the ads between like 9 to 5. While if you're running a lead form where they fill out information, after hours might be better suited. So you have to consider your audience and who you're actually trying to target. The powerful bits. Okay, location. So we can pick people out via a very wide area or very narrow areas. So I've put in Rockhampton, my local area, and I can reduce this down to 10 miles. That's the minimum. But if I'm just going to float down here to Gladstone. If I take the drop pin icon and drop it there, I now have the ability to reduce it down to 1 mile. So much smaller, more for suburb. And this is very useful if you're trying to pick out particular neighborhoods, maybe very affluent neighborhoods. The platform's in miles because it's American platforms. They never like to count it in lots of 100, but I believe 1 mile is around about 2-ish, 2.5 Ks. But you sort of get a map indication of where it is. Now, we want this campaign to solely run on Instagram, so we have to make sure to come down here and select a manual placement. And we're going to turn off Facebook Audience Network and just leave Instagram on. So this will appear in Instagram Feed, Instagram Explore, Instagram Stories, and Instagram Reels and InStream. And you can turn these on and off depending on what type of campaign you're actually running. So that's how we get it on Instagram from Facebook. Now, the real powerful part, the placements, and picking out exactly who your audience is. I'm going to leave the age the same. I'm going to select all genders, and I'm going to leave languages the same. But in my browse section here, we have some very powerful options. I can pick people out based on their relationship status, whether they're engaged, in a relationship, married, so forth. You can pick people out based on what industry they work in. So you might say, okay, I want to target people who work in IT and technical services. Let's see what else we can find. Interests. Interests are, again, very powerful. You can pick out people based on if they drink energy drinks or show interest in it, whether they have an interest in children's clothing, whether they have an interest in online shopping. That's a very important one if you're trying to target people who shop online already. So you've got demographics, which tend to be the more powerful option. Then you've got behaviors and then interests. Behaviors are things like what type of mobile device they use, whether they're engaged shoppers. If you're not sure what any of these mean, if you hover over them, they'll tell you some additional information. So this one is people who have clicked on the call to action button, shop now in the past week. So that can be quite powerful. So this is a bit of a mismatched collection of users, which I wouldn't recommend choosing something this broad. I generally recommend that you pick out something that's really refined down to exactly who you're trying to target. So engaged shoppers who do online shopping. I'm going to use the narrow audience function to fine tune it. I'm going to pick out an interest in yoga. So now my audience has to be an engaged shopper and does online shopping and must have an interest in yoga. This allows me to fine tune my audience down, and I have estimated daily reach of 1.5 to 4.4 thousand people. I'm just going to turn this back onto a daily budget of $1.35. So for $1.35, I will reach between 355 and 1,000 people with this campaign. So this is where it can be very, very powerful and very, very effective in designing your campaigns if you can reach the right people, fine-tuned down to your exact target audience. I'd further refine this by, if I'm trying to target people that are interested in yoga, I'd create two campaigns, one for female and one for male. And I'd use a female for the female market and male for the male market in terms of my imagery. And I would also probably have sub ads as well for the different age groups. So if you're trying to target senior women for yoga, you're going to use visuals that will relate and connect with them. You're not going to get a teeny bopper age 18 using an image of a senior citizen. So whatever visual you use for your ads have to be relevant and they have to be relatable. So once we pick out our exact audience, the final step is to actually pick out what visual we're going to use. So this is where you can load up your various pictures and so forth, and you can put your connections through to like your websites. This is reasonably straightforward. Sort of just follow the steps, and any issues you have, it will give you an alert for it. Looking at Ads Manager on Instagram, it's a little bit more simplified than this. Before we go any further, is there any other questions from anyone in the audience? You can use the chat function below in your Zoom controls to put out a question. Okay, I'm going to assume for the moment that there's no questions. And let's keep going. Let's talk all things influencers. Okay, so choosing your influencer. It's a little bit difficult to pick out your first influencer because you want to make sure that you're getting your value with the dollars that you're going to be spending. So I generally recommend that first of all, you choose an influencer with a relatable market. You want to find someone that has sort of similar experience or knowledge of your product. Sending, for instance, hiring me as an influencer to promote beauty products isn't going to be very effective. So you want to connect with an influencer that has an audience that follows them for something that's similar or something that's relatable. So if the influencer you're considering has done a lot of influencing around hair products and you ask them to promote a nail polish, it's a connected and relatable industry in that it's both in the beauty field. So I generally recommend, especially for a business picking the influencer for the first time, that you choose an influencer with a niche market. Someone that they might only have a couple thousand fans, but those fans tend to be a little bit more engaged and active rather than choosing a big time influencer. You want to make sure that you consider your customer acquisition costs. There's generally two ways to do it. The first one being is that you can pay per post. So you go, okay, I'm going to give you $100 for each post that you put up about our product, service, brand. or you can pay per result, where each time you get a sale, they get a marginal percentage off it. The final sort of one is using something like a product for post, as in you want some of this product, we'll send you out this product, you promote it. When choosing an influencer, you want to make sure that you choose one with a suitable size following, but you also want to make sure that they have high engagement and likes. It's very easy to go online and buy a couple of thousand fans and followers for your page, but it's not going to benefit you. So you want to make sure that where you choose an influencer, that if they put up a post, they get a couple hundred likes, comments, they get that sort of engagement. That's probably more important, the engagement, than the actual size that they're following. Another way that in particular I like to use the influencer type category is making my customers my influencers, especially if my customers are, they love my brand and my product and they're speaking about it already. You can send them out a discount code that they can then share with their friends. So essentially then every single one of your customers has the potential to be one of your influencers, or for the cost of a discount on their next product. So very, very powerful and very effective, especially in the earlier days of influencer marketing. Probably influencer marketing has lost a lot of its respect, just for a few things that have happened in the past, and also there seems to be an oversaturation of them in the market now. There's still potential to work with them though. So Instagram Stories is a very, very powerful function. I showed you it was that section at the start. What we're finding is that users are using Instagram Stories more now than actually scrolling down through the feed. So it's important that you, as a business, you actually start creating content for stories as well as your feed. And they have a lot of built-in functions and tools that make it very easy to do so. So you can use like filters, you can add music to make your content more attractive. You don't even necessarily have to actually take a photo or picture. You can just use questions, like you can see on the screen there. When you put a question on there, it gets you instant engagement. Questions are also powerful and useful, same as polls if you're in the process of developing or designing a new product. It could be that you put up a poll and you go, do you like the blue color or the green color? Let your customers give you back information on what sort of product they're looking to purchase. So using the stories and the question functions I find very useful in terms of market research for your customers. You can also use things like stickers to enhance your stories, and tags so that your customers can shop your products. So stories is very functional. There's a lot of options there, and it has a lot of built-in tools. If you haven't used stories, my first recommendation is literally just to open it up on the app and have a little bit of a play around. You can see on the left-hand side screenshot there, I actually have it set on my favorite function, which is the level function. It just allows you to take a much straighter, much nicer photo. But you also have things like super zoom, which will zoom in. You have things like boomerang, where you sort of make it warp in and out. The hands-free is also useful if you want to step back and be in the shot, for instance. So there's a variety of different options there, and I'd recommend that everyone starts using Instagram Stories. So touching on imagery, I'm going to give you a few tips to just take better quality content. So I always recommend for all things photography, and I've been taking photographs for some 12 years now commercially, always recommend wherever possible use natural light. It always looks better, especially if you can get those first rays in the sun. If you're using LED lights, for instance, like a ring light, which is very popular now, try and soften the output. You can put a piece of white linen over the top and it'll just take it from being so harsh to a little bit softer, a little bit more natural. I recommend that you explore different angles when you're capturing your subject. Objects have direction, If, for instance, people really very rarely look good straight on. A little bit of an angle and they tend to look a little bit better. So think about different ways to approach your photography rather than the same old straight on shot. Add a little bit of life to your imagery, position things a little differently, add in some additional props to make your photos a little bit more creative and draw a little bit more attention. Edit and filter. Don't settle for the image straight out of the camera. Use the inbuilt tools like the brighten, the contrast, the color. Use a different filter. And touching on filters there as well, I recommend that you use the same filter for your pictures. That way your feed has like a curated type of feel where everything's kind of similar and the same, as opposed to having different pictures with different looks and different sort of gradients. So I recommend that you use the same sort of styling and editing all the way through, just to give yourself a little bit of brand consistency. Which feeds really nicely onto my number one tip. Always be consistent. Develop a style and a strategy that represents your brand. Brand development is something that really does take time. So work out your marketing plan and stick with it. Generally, a marketing plan is something that you run for at least a quarter to test it out. And if something's not working, then adjust it, make a change, try something new. But there's very little point in getting started with something and then getting bored of it or running out of time and doing something different. So develop a style, develop a strategy that represents your business and stick with it. So to do that, I recommend grabbing a content calendar. So quite literally jump onto Google, type in, blank calendar for printing, print out a calendar, and work out where you're going to post for each of the different boxes. In terms of how many posts are right for your feed, for most businesses, I tend to recommend around about 3 posts per week. So work out what your 3, maybe even up to 4 posts are going to be and write them out in your calendar. If you're not sure what to actually be posting, work out every single product and service that you offer and start filling in the boxes. Then add a few, about your brand, how you got started. Tell a little bit of a story about your business. Customers will eat it up, they'll engage with that content. It leads to the potential that they'll ask questions. So work out your calendar first and then go through and take all the photos and video that you're going to require and put them together and start editing them up and putting them up one by one. Alternatively, you could use a scheduling software. Facebook has the option through their Creator Studio, but you also got things like HubSpot and various other third-party ones that will schedule your content for you. Me personally, I've just used the Creator Studio in the past. Captions are absolutely critical. Even if you have the best picture, the best video, you want to tell a little bit of information, caption section, so your audience understands what you're trying to promote and what your story is. If you're using purely just story visual imagery, for instance, using Instagram stories, add in those tags there, something where they can click on the screen and go somewhere else, the swipe up type functions to learn more about your brand and your product. Create actions. If you have the ability to be able to shop, have Instagram shop on, you're going to get more sales. If you don't have the Instagram shop set up yet, I always recommend that you have a shop function or link in your bio to create those leads or those sales, somewhere they can click through. Click-throughs and call to actions are always very important. Worked with a business recently and their Instagram shop had been down for 6 months. And when we looked at their sales statistics, you could see the dive where their sales dropped off without having the ability to tag and connect the Instagram store. As soon as that was turned back on, their sales started to increase purely because they're missing out on that click-through action from their Instagram. So talking about call to actions, your next step for learning. It's very hard in one of these webinars for me to give detailed, precise information out to the attendees. In that I'm keeping it generic across for all industries. But through the Business Station Digital Solutions Program, which is the Australian Government initiative, you can get 7 hours of personalised business mentorship for only $44. It gives you the opportunity to speak with experts like myself, face-to-face or online, depending on the region that you're in relation to me or where our advisors are. It gives you the opportunity to help grow your business and hit your goals. So mentorship is available in a variety of different areas, from digital marketing and social media, things like having a look at your Instagram and teaching you how to take better content for instance, or things like websites and selling online, making sure that your e-commerce store is actually set up correctly with the Instagram feeds installed, with Facebook feeds installed and so forth, so you can create those call to action functions. Online security and data privacy. It's so important these days that you make sure that your Instagram and your other social media accounts are secure. The amount of hours I've spent in my life recovering pages that have been hacked is just absolutely abysmal. And it can all be avoided just by turning on two-factor authentication. So make sure you add additional security functions where there has to be some sort of confirmation so that hackers cannot take control of your social media. It can literally destroy businesses if their only point of sales, their sales channel for the business, is their social media. You can also learn things like using small business software, the right software to automate your tasks and your workflow, for instance. There's a few other categories that you can also learn in, things like applying for grants, resilience and well-being, HR type questions. So if that's something you're interested in, you have to ask, are you eligible? So to be eligible for the Digital Solutions Program, you just have to have an ABN that's registered in Western Australia, Queensland, Northern Territory. You have to be running your business to make a profit. If you're not-for-profit and you're in Queensland, there is an option to apply for our pilot program, so do get in touch. You have to employ fewer than 20 full-time staff members. So if that sounds like you, visit us at Business Station Digital Solutions. The link is there on the screen. Alternatively, what you could be doing is you could scan the QR code that's been in my background this entire time. I'll move out of the way and give you a better shot of that in a minute. But at this point in time in our webinar, does anyone have any questions? Is there anything that you want me to go over in further detail? Now's your chance to ask those questions. And if you want to scan the QR code, there's your opportunity right there on the screen now. If you don't have any questions for me, do feel free to, in that chat function, let me know what's the best thing that you learned in this webinar course tonight. If you want me to have a quick look at your Instagram and you have no problem with me sharing up on the screen, you can put your Instagram link in the comments and I'll have a look at it. Okay, so we have a question from the audience around if I have some tips on finding great hashtags. When you start researching hashtags, you'll generally find one of two things. The hashtag is very heavily used, it's very popular, or it's underused and very few people are using it. And there's benefit to both of it. So if it's a widely used one, there's potential that you'll jump on that bandwagon and you'll be seen more by a larger audience, but you also have more competition. With a smaller hashtag that's less used, you'll probably find a niche audience that might be a little more passionate around your product or service. So what I recommend doing is go and have a look at a business on Instagram that's popular, that has a good following, and see what sort of hashtags that they use. Make sure it's a business that's relatable to you. Go through and start copying down all their hashtags, and then look for ones that relate and connect with those ones. And quite quickly, you'll sort of develop a bit of a bank of hashtags. And what I like to do is I like to save them in a Excel document. So all the hashtags I'm going to use for my businesses. And if I have a post that goes off particularly well, I'll sort of mark down what hashtags I use and I'll use those ones again. But to find the perfect hashtag is really a combination of trial and error and working out where your customer is. It's very much the very first step of marketing is know your customer, know where they hang out, know what their interests are. If you know those things, it's very easy to target them online. I hope that's useful to you. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a question around setting up your shop, and the easiest way to do it is to connect via Facebook. So I'm using a business that's given me permission to use their page for the purpose of this example. And what I've done is I've just gone on, I've clicked on the shop tab. So activating the shop tab can be done through the settings. And it will ask you to go to the Commerce Manager to set up your page. So in here, it'll give you the option to connect via Instagram or Facebook. So select the one that's most appropriate. And then it will ask you for information about your page. And down here, it gives you the checkout method. So you can check out on another website, or you can check out with Facebook and Instagram. This is a function that's currently only available if you're in the US. The final one is you can check out via Messenger. So customers message you, you give across bank account details, a link, then arrange for them to pick up. But if you're checking out another website, then it'll connect through straight away to wherever your e-commerce platform is. And a little quick tip about that, if you're new to e-commerce and you're just getting started, I recommend using Shopify, and I recommend using Shopify Lite. What Shopify Lite does, it gives you all the functionality of the checkout without actually having the website. So it's a little bit of a stepgap between having a full e-commerce platform and just doing some basic e-commerce. So use your Shopify Lite, $9 US a month, and it'll give you the ability to be able to take payments. And this is where you can take your Instagram shop and your Facebook shop and drop it straight into the payment option. So I recommend that. Once you check out all your information, it will ask you various things like what's your website link, where you ship to, that sort of thing. And once it's all said and done, you finish it, connect your shop. At that point in time, you then have to go onto your Instagram. And if memory serves me correctly, you click on Add Tools. If you already got the option installed on your Instagram, or you've had it before, it'll give you the option there to set up your Instagram shop. Just click through the options and it takes like a day or two to review. If you've never had it, then you go in through settings, and down the very bottom, there'll be in business, there'll be an option there to set up an Instagram shop. I'll just see if I can get an example for you. Just trying to see a Instagram page I can actually use. Okay, let me get the screen share happening. Okay, so we've gone to settings, and in our settings here, we click on business, and then we have the option there to set up Instagram shopping. You go through the process, click get started, it will ask you what your accounts are, that sort of thing. Go through each of the steps, and then it will be reviewed by Facebook and eventually get set up. So that's all just through the settings tab, business, set up Instagram shopping. Again, the main benefit of this is that you're able to tag products in your post or story, which allows your customers to be able to connect through straight away. So very, very functional and very powerful. Okay, So I hope you've definitely learned something that's going to be useful for your business tonight. Again, if you want more help, then access direct support through the Digital Solutions Program. For just $44, you can get 7 hours of support through the Digital Solutions Program, potentially even with myself. If you want to work with me, select me as your preferred advisor. I look forward to further helping businesses grow, and I'm always very excited to work with a new brand. So I've been Fahey for Business Station as part of the Digital Solutions Program, an Australian government initiative to help small businesses in Australia.